Good evening. So, I got a couple more converts. They sent me some emails. So, yeah, that little book seems to be having quite an effect. And I'm also getting quite a few questions, some emails, comments, whatever, about all sorts of things to do with Catholicism. And I've also had my friend Dave, just have a little go or whatever it was. I can't even remember the details of it now about I don't know, something about, oh yeah, that's what happened. It was like, oh, the number of um, people that are leaving the church from Protestantism, and then he went on about how everybody's leaving the Catholic Church, and I said, no, they're not leaving the Catholic Church, they're leaving the Novus Ordo Church and all that. But it got me into starting this book, which I think I showed you guys the other day, God's Battalions by Rodney Stark, and I think he's one of my new favorite authors. I mean, I'm only that far in. But the thing is, he doesn't mince his words. He calls a spade, and he summarizes a lot of very detailed work by many other historians in a very, not just efficient, but accurate manner. So, I'm really enjoying it. It's really great, and it puts the lie to the whole. Oh, the Muslims like educated Europe. No, the Muslims didn't educate anybody. They stole what they, had taken over from when they conquered Spain and so on. And it's I don't want to spoil it for you. It's a lot of really good, detailed, great information. But in both reading this book and doing some other research, what's become more and more apparent to me. Oh, and people keep telling me about this Jay Dyer guy. I don't give a fuck who Jay Dyer is. I don't know who he is, and I don't care. Apparently, I believe, and I may be wrong because I honestly haven't got a clue who he is, and I couldn't care less. Apparently, he's some Orthodox guy who goes on about Orthodoxy and how Protestantism is wrong, and apparently, according to him, the sedevacantist position is also as bad as Protestants. And first of all, somebody who says that probably doesn't even know what sedevacantists are. And sedevacantist is a misnomer anyway, because sedevacantist is Latin for the chair is empty, which is what happens whenever a pope dies before they elect another pope. But the chair is not empty. The chair is filled by an impostor preventing the filling of the chair by a true pope. So sedeprivationist is the more correct term. Now, if Jay Dyer, whoever the hell he is, thinks that the sedevacantist position is wrong, I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% sure that he won't say that just because the term is not sedeprivationist, right? I think he'll say that because he's a moron and he hasn't got a clue what Vatican II is, and he hasn't got a clue what the heresies of Vatican II are, and so on and so forth. But the thing that I've noticed about Orthodox, or that rather, I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to notice, and the more I investigate it, the more this seems to be the case. But I'm very conscious of, I've always been very, very good at avoiding confirmation bias, and so I don't want to do that. But so far, the thing is, I'm also really good at synthesizing a lot of information very quickly. Just to give you an idea, my sister-in-law had a brain tumor, which supposedly inoperable, and the survival rate after 18 months was 0%. I found 3 survivors. I called them up. I've discovered what they did. I studied research on the internet, and after 6 months, I wrote a 14-page paper in about 2 hours to give to her oncologist, which they read, and they actually listened to what I said, which was very good of them. And so my sister-in-law, ex-sister-in-law, because I'm divorced from that woman, but anyway, she managed to get this drug which helped her live for another 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, the cancer came back, and I couldn't get that drug to her. I didn't know about it. Nobody told me about it until a lot later, so I don't believe she got access to the correct drug. and she passed away. However, that extension of time allowed her to have a son, and so she had a son before she passed away, and that's something, you know. But anyway, the point was I synthesized that information in 6 months, and by the end of that, I was talking with top level specialists in this particular type of glioblastoma, which is a specific type of brain tumor from which almost no one survives. And I was talking to them at their level. Now, you might think that's arrogance or that I'm just talking shit, but it isn't. I can synthesize a lot of information very quickly, and I'm really good at spotting patterns in data and information. So, the thing is, I've also done that as my work for many years and so on. So, on many different and in different aspects of different types of work. So, what I'm starting to detect about the Orthodox is that they dodge the details, and they even historically have always kind of pretty much avoided having a hard line when it comes to the invading Saracens and so on. The way I think of the Orthodox is they're very rigid and sort of stagnant. Rigid in a stagnant sort of way, and not that effective really in the world, in the world that unfortunately we have to live in, which is the domain of Satan. It's becoming more and more patently obvious that absolutely without a shadow of a doubt, Christendom would not exist if it was not for Catholic warriors. While the Orthodox warriors also fought, it's an absolute certainty that without Catholic knights and Catholic warriors, there would be no Christendom. It's Catholics that protected Europe from the invading Muslims. It's Catholics that essentially invented science, and so on and so forth. And by the way, this guy Rodney Stark, unless he's recently converted, when he wrote Bearing False Witness, which puts the lie to a lot of the stuff that the Catholics are accused of, he certainly wasn't a Catholic then. I don't know. The way I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, is this guy Catholic and really biased? But I don't think so. He's mentioning some very accurate historical things, which I already knew about. But he's the first guy I've ever read as an academic who is saying, he literally uses words like, oh, the idea that the Muslims were more civilized or better treated the people they conquered any better than anybody else is absolute nonsense. And he names names of academics who try and present this whole the Crusades were barbarians and the poor harmless Muslims were just whatever. He calls them out on it. So it's really interesting. But what's becoming absolutely obvious to me is that, again, we are told in the Bible to look at the fruits. And the fact is that the fruit of Catholicism, that's the other thing. Those of you that have not watched the 2D thinking versus 3D thinking video, watch that. There's a couple of guys that made a few comments that said, oh, I got scared when I watched your UFO video and that, but then I went to look at your 2D versus 3D and thank God I watched it. Thank you so much. That's really helped me clarify a lot of things. So it's very helpful, that 2D versus 3D thinking. You have to sort of be able to think three-dimensionally rather than just, black and white and two-dimensionally and binary way of thinking. The thing is, let us accept, let's do a thought experiment. Let us accept that, Christianity is real, Jesus is who he said he was and all that. And he instituted a church on earth, keeping in mind that earth is under the dominion of the enemy. What kind of church would that be? What would that look like? How would that church survive? Because all human beings are flawed, all human beings are broken, all human beings will make bad mistakes when they're not intentionally evil. Plus there's demonic oppression, plus there's demonic influence, plus Satan hates us and he's trying to, make sure we all go wrong. And the Catholic Church has got a history of popes that, I mean, some of these guys make pirates look meek and weak, and yet it not only survived, but it essentially conquered the world in terms of spreading the gospel of Christ. What did the Orthodox do? I mean, Greek and Russian Orthodox, and where did they go? How much did they spread the gospel? That's pretty much it. They stayed in Greece and Russia. The Catholics went all over the world. They literally catechized to the Japanese, to the point where Japanese samurai, I mean, the Japanese killed and crucified the Catholics that were there. Whenever they went there, they killed them. But some samurai, despite that, were secretly Catholic. They were secretly Christian. And this only got discovered relatively recently, actually. They catechized the world. They catechized the whole of South America. They put an end to the vicious and evil practices of the Aztecs and the Mayans, which were, committing human sacrifice to the tune of 20,000 people a day, cutting their hearts out to please the sun god. And you can say, oh, but the poor, the evil Catholics massacred the poor natives. Yeah, you know what? Those poor natives were violent, evil, warmongering, mass murdering freaks. We educated them. There's always, eggs, omelets, all that shit. But it's becoming absolutely clear. And then when you look at the beauty of actual Catholicism, of actual Catholic instruction, of actual Catholic education, real one, not the Novus Ordo shit, right? Not all the Novus Ordo crap that's been going on since 1958 and then infiltrated. The Catholic Church has been attacked more than any other denomination, bar none. The whole purpose of the Illuminati, of the Freemasons, was to destroy Catholicism. That is its only purpose on earth. That's why they destroyed all the royalty in Europe, throughout Europe. Because, keep in mind that the papacy, and then what the Protestants and the Orthodox get all upset about, oh, it's papal supremacy, it's evil. No. You need to understand what papal supremacy is. Plus, people confuse papal supremacy with papal infallibility. As far as I know, papal infallibility only officially tried to come in as a result of Vatican I, which was done by Pius XII, who was the last real pope, legitimate pope, and who could see the tide coming. And he was a pretty rigid, hardcore guy. So he tried to stem it by saying, no, the Pope is, what he says is law, because he wanted to try and stop what was going on. But the fact is that no one ratified, no one agreed with him, not even his own cardinals. So is there such a thing as papal infallibility? It certainly never got accepted before. Catholics all know that there isn't any such thing as a perfect human being. So, it's questionable whether that's even a thing. And it's got nothing to do with papal supremacy. Now, what they call about papal supremacy, and really it's based in envy. It's actually based in envy. The criticism that the Protestants and the Orthodox have about papal supremacy, it's based in envy. Because the Catholic Church has been absolutely successful in not only catechizing the world, but maintaining order within Christendom. And if you're looking big picture, now you're saying, oh, but look at that priest and look at that bishop. He raped little kids, and that priest was evil and stole money. Yeah, first of all, the issue about pedophilia was never as rampant as it has been since 1958, because there was a determined infiltration by predatory homosexuals throughout the beginning of the 20th century. From the beginning of the 20th century, it was already well underway. So that's a relatively recent thing. I'm not saying it never happened before. I'm sure it did, but the crimes of the evil priests were more along the lines of fraud, money, orgies, sex with women, more sort of pedestrian sort of things, rather than child sacrifice to the Satan or whatever is going on now in the Vatican. And the thing is, their fruits bore fruit. They invented science, they catechized the world, they stopped slavery, they liberated the idea that women are valuable, they're not chattel, they have a specific role as wives and mothers and so on, and all of that stuff. It's all the Catholics. They didn't just sit in their own little fucking Russian corner or Greek corner, and they've been attacked by everybody from the beginning the most. Now, why would you get attacked? No one attacks you if you're irrelevant. No one attacks you if you don't change anything. No one attacks you if you're not a threat. So, big picture, it's becoming more and more clear to me that Catholicism is closer to the truth than any other denomination. And, as I've said before, in my mind, it's pretty much get Catholic or get the fuck out. Although I have, like I said before as well, that I believe that there are certain Orthodox and even a few certain Protestants outliers that I would consider Christians. But, big picture scenario, if you're going to try and hit the target, why the hell would you start from the outer rings? Try and hit the bullseye from day one. And in my mind, that's Catholicism. The rules are all written down. There's no fucking dodging. No dodging about, oh, well, it's a mystery. Yes, the Catholic also have mysteries. But there's been a long history of deep philosophical thought about every aspect of the Bible, about every aspect of the Church Fathers. Huge minds have contemplated the Word and, all the things that go with it. So, yeah, I'm just letting you guys know that that's pretty much how I see it. Now, I do want to do a video at some point where I answer all the questions. There's many questions, and I'm no theologian, and I don't want to be any theologian, and I have no interest in having, debates with the Orthodox, or I did one with Dave, a couple with Dave, just, to see that, hey, we can disagree and still be buddies. And I think probably, with Dave, we're going to keep disagreeing more and more, the more I find out. But, Dave's an earnest guy. He's my buddy, and that's not really going to change. There is, it's very interesting, what I was saying about the envy. The reason about papal supremacy, sorry, I was going to forget about that bit. So papal supremacy, what it basically is like, well, we are in the world, right? We have to live in the world. We're not of the world, but we have to live in the world. That means we have to deal with the crap of the world, the demonic influences, the stupid people, the evil people. We have to deal with that. In order to deal with that, you need discipline, you need structure, and you need obedience, you need loyalty. And no one really has gone as far and as deep and as wide as the Catholics have done in all of those things. It is only because of a structure that, has priests, bishops, cardinals, and the Pope, archbishops and whatever. But you have to understand that the Catholic Church only has priests and bishops. Cardinal is a title that you get, like you will get, the like leader for the missions, another leader of the exorcists and whatever. So there'll be different offices. But a cardinal is just a worldly title. A cardinal is usually I don't think you have to be you might have to be a bishop to be a cardinal, I'm not sure. But you can be a cardinal and it means nothing. It's a worldly thing. Even the Pope is just a bishop. The reason he's given the title of Pope is because he's the supreme leader of this hierarchy, which has to deal with the world. It has to deal with real life. Catholicism is not some airy fairy la la la, we drink grape juice and happy clappy Jesus and whatever. No, it deals with the realities of the world, and that's why it did so well. That's why it did convert so many people. That's why it did take over so many lands. That's why it did create the best system of human society in the world, bar none. It's a far superior social order and fairness, justice, beauty than any other philosophy, than any other religion on the planet. Okay, the Japanese had a very successful philosophy which worked for them as long as they were isolated from the rest of the world. But once the rest of the world pressed in on them, it collapsed. It was unsustainable. They still have very strong, cultural roots and so on. But really, Catholicism changed the world. It didn't crumble when it had to meet the world. The world crumbled when it met Catholicism. And no other denomination of Christianity can hold a candle to Catholicism in that respect. So, from the point of view of look at their fruits, the Catholics win hands down. Absolutely they win hand down. So that's interesting to me, and sort of tells me I'm probably on the right track. And also, it's really interesting that once you show the uncatechized cradle Catholic the truth about Vatican II, and they read it and explain it, and they understand it, it's really interesting to see how they change from sort of a little bit lackadaisical, a little bit lost, fearful in their eyes, to like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, yeah, fuck. You can just see that, you can see like, yeah, just give it another minute, and these guys are ready to put on armor and go marching straight back to Jerusalem, type of thing. So it's very interesting. And the two emails I got today, one was from a guy who had been brought up in the Novus Ordo and whose parents are Novus Ordo, but they're not orcs. He said, they're just ignorant and they don't know any better. And I drifted away from the Novus Ordo because I thought, no, and I drifted into some Protestant denominations, which, they held the line and they weren't sort of the converged lesbian priest or whatever. But he said, but now that I've read your book and stuff, it's like, oh man, I think I'm going to convert to Orthodoxy, I think he said. And, I'm letting people like that know, yeah, I know it's harder to be a real Catholic because there's not many of them. There's not enough priests that do the proper Mass. There's not enough Latin Masses to go around. But again, canon188.com. Go to the About page there. There's links there to various articles. At the bottom of the article on Canon 188.4, there's a link there to, I think it's sgg.com, St. Gertrude's Church. That's one of the priests from there that wrote the article on Canon 188.4. So if you're in America, call them up, look them up. One of the other guys that emailed me, that's what he did. He called them up and he said, I'm going to find a priest. I found there's a place that's only like 2 hours away. It's good. That's excellent. The guy's got a family, he's got kids, but he's like, yeah, that place is only 2 hours away. I'm going to fucking go there. You bet. And then I'm going to try and buy a church. I don't know what this guy's means are or whatever, if he's just like pumped up or if he's actually going to do it. But, from the time he read the book to the time he sent me that email, it was like a couple of days later, and he's already called these guys up, found out where the Latin Mass is, going to take his kids and his family there. That's a win. That is a win. Keep in mind, I've got a long-term strategy. What I want to do is round up all the disappointed, lackadaisical, apostate, half Churchian Catholics. Because a lot of those guys are just lost. They just don't know any better. Catechize yourself. Read up on what being a real Catholic is about. Read up the books all before 1958. Get the Catechism of the Catholic Church before 1958. Read the books of Malachi Martin. The Exorcist. There's some... I read his book about being an exorcist, and it's the thing is, I've had some experiences that I know that God wasn't just making shit up. There's some really scary shit out there, but we're not given to a spirit of fear, and keep that in mind. But find out about the real history of the Catholics. Look, buy this book, read it. Buy the Crusades of Iron Men and Saints by Harold Lamb. Read that book. I don't think that you can read the Crusades of Iron Men and Saints without feeling something, of strength, of power, of beauty, of justice sort of growing inside you as it's a historical factual book, but it's amazing. It's probably my top 10 books, and I've read thousands of books. It really is a great read. It's astonishing. It's a really good book. And this one is giving me a very similar feeling. This is a bit more, even more detailed. The Crusades of Iron Men and Saints is detailed, but it's also written in a way that flows quite a lot and very visually pleasing in terms of describing some of the battles and what the armor of the knights was like, what the situation of the sieges was like, what some of these characters, it gets right down to the personalities of the people involved, because there's a lot of documentation on some of these guys. I found out by reading the Crusades of Iron Men and Saints that my maternal grandfather was called Tancredi, which I always thought, what a crappy name. Who names their kid Tancredi? But Tancredi was one of the heroes of the First Crusade. And I never knew that. That now suddenly made sense why my grandfather was called Tancredi. It's very interesting stuff. So you will find out your own history if you're of European descent is fascinating. The Franks, the Frankish people, Frank actually means free man. That's where it comes from. The name Franco or Frank means free man. Because these guys, they didn't quit. They didn't give up to anybody. Honestly, it's astonishing. You should get some history under your belt, and get some history about the Catholic Church under your belt. And it becomes very hard to remain Protestant or even Orthodox, Truly, they're the guys that changed the world. And now we're a remnant, The Catholic Church got infiltrated, but it's all prophesied, so don't fear, don't despair. So there's a remnant of the Catholic Church, but it'll always be there. It is supernaturally protected. It's going to be hard times for Catholics, real hard times. But that's the fun in that's the beauty of it. That's the challenge. That's the thing. Don't despair. That who the fuck despairs? Protestants despair. Maybe some Orthodox. I don't know. No, Catholics. The Novus Orchians despair all the time, and Churchians of all kinds despair. But if you're a Catholic Church and if you think that Bergoglio was Pope or Ratzinger was Pope, no. Go and believe. Read my little book or educate yourself some other way. Go to sodalitium.biz. Yeah, that's the guys I got baptized with. Mater Boni Concili. They've got churches in Turin. They've got churches in Belgium. They've got a mission here in London. And actually, one of the guys that made a comment, he sent me his phone number. I gave him a quick call, and he's hopefully going to come to Mass at the end of the month. So it's starting. It's starting. Join the ranks, put on your armor, sharpen your swords, because we want not a few thousand, not a few hundred, we want millions of real Catholics. Do you know what the Catholics did? Read your history, find out what the Catholics did. Do you understand what will happen if we get 1 million Catholics in the same country? What we can do with 1 million Catholics? We can change the world, right? 1 million Catholics that all act in concert. And remember, there's no valid pope at the moment, and very few valid bishops, and very few valid priests. So we've gone back to crusade times. Those guys had like communion maybe once a year if they were lucky. We have it once a month, so we're good. Some guy in Ireland wrote to me and said, "Hey, where can I find a church? How can I get a priest up here? I'm the only one that I know of around me." Get some more. Get your mates. Remind them. I mean, Irish Catholics, they fought everything. They didn't quit. So figure it out. Reject Vatican II. Realize what happened to the real Catholic Church. Come back. Grow up. Grow. We'll get a pope again, but a pope's not that important. A pope's just a bishop. He's just a leader of the thing. And now, if you guys that listen to Vox read about warfare and first generation warfare, second generation warfare, and most military actions now are second generation warfare, but the real thing is fourth generation warfare, which is essentially guerrilla warfare. And that's why You know, Afghanistan has been undefeated for 4,000 years. You really think that the Americans or the British or anybody else is going to go to Afghanistan and win the war? They will get their ass handed to them. And the Americans have got their ass handed to them every time. Every time, Vietnam, Iraq, wherever they go, they will get their ass handed to them whenever they're dealing with guerrilla warfare people who do not quit, do not give up. Well, guess what? We're a remnant. The Catholic Church is a remnant. We are now all special forces, pockets of special forces all over the place. We don't need a one leader. We don't need the one pope to tell us everything. You got your priest, get your priest. You don't have your priest, write to me, write to the priest, send them an email. Tell them, hey, here's where we are. Here's what we're doing. We don't have a priest. We can't have communion. We're laymen, but we're reading. We're educating. We're sticking together. We count ourselves as real Christians, real Catholics. We reject everything to do with Vatican II. That's where we're at, boys and girls. It's fourth generation spiritual warfare. We're here to kick ass, and we don't even bother with names. So that's the attitude, you know. And I'm no preacher. I'm never gonna be a preacher. I'm just a guy, right? My nature is to be one of those guys in the armor with the cross and go walk. You know, that's how I'm built. You're built the way you're built. But as long as you're Catholic, real Catholic, we're all on the same side. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you are, because we're all pulling the same direction. And the more of us get together, the more of us meet up, the more of us connect with each other, the more of us tell our friends, the more of us spread the word, the effect is like wildfire. There are over 1 billion Catholics. Most of them are fooled. Most of them are deceived by Bergoglio and his satanic horde of orcs. Wake them up, and you've got a giant on your hand that you cannot win against. You cannot win against it. In China, there's over 60 million Catholics that were abandoned, deceived, and betrayed by the fake satanic, fake Novus Orchians. But there are real Catholics in China. There's more Catholics in China than in the whole of Italy, because they've got a population of 60 million Catholics, which is a tiny percentage of China, but is 60 million is the entire population of Italy. So there's plenty of us, plenty. So let's get organized. Tell your little friends, tell your mates. Create little cells, little independently operating cells who then communicate with each other. You can take one cell out, you can take 2 out, you can take 10 out, doesn't matter. 50 new ones will rise in its place. So that's who we are. I hope this has been a little bit motivational and inspirational. Those of you that are converting because of my book, or if it's helping you to get that way, please drop me an email and not just a comment on the thing. If you don't know where to find my email, work it out. It's not that hard. Go on my blog, you can figure it out. And please, guys, try and keep it relatively short emails. I can't respond to all the mail I get, but I am trying to keep a head count of how many people this book is converting, because I think it's having an effect that might be really important. And if that's the case, I'm going to try and send out books to influential people that maybe can give it more airspace. If you've enjoyed the book, if it's helped you convert, write me a review. Write me a good review. That helps the algorithms. That's the whole point. We want to spread like wildfire and increase the number of real Catholics, because look what the Catholic Church did. And we're going to have to do it again. My ultimate aim is to recreate city-states of Catholic people. City-states is, I believe, the ultimate form, the best form of governance for human beings. Because once you become a huge state, then the bureaucrats, the politicians, the power mongers, and that's always going to be a problem. But you take La Serenissima, Venice. Venice was independent from everybody for like 3,000 years, Those guys managed to hold everybody off. At one point, they were holding off the Byzantine Empire, the various inter-European warring parties and so on, and the church. They kept everybody at fucking bay and still managed to do what they wanted to do. And that was one city, one city state. Yes, it became La Repubblica della Serenissima, became pretty extended, but essentially it was one city state of Catholics, and that's where we want to go again, right? We want to create that. So start with your family. Catechise your family. Start your family. Then maybe your neighbor, maybe your buddy, maybe your friend at work, maybe some guy who is a nominal Catholic that you don't know very much about. Give him the book. Talk to him yourself. Give him another book if it helps. Give him the Crusades. Give him this God's Battalion. I'm not saying that you have to go out and give my book. I'm saying it seems to be useful. So if it's useful, use it, I'm not going to tell you, oh, I'm too modest for you to shout out my book. No, false modesty is not a virtue. So if my book's helping people convert, good, spread it. So that's pretty much that. If you've got questions about that sort of stuff, make a comment and leave a question. Now, if it's a gamma, they'll just get banned. If it's a dumb question, that shows me you're lazy, because I've talked about a bunch of this stuff before. So video number 1, remember, video number 1 tells you about the Catholic Church. Video number 1 and 2 are on in my videos. They're all numbered, so it's easy to find. So, but if you do have questions, leave them. If they're funny, stupid questions, I might make fun of you. If they're intelligent, good questions, I might do a whole video on it, And I do always try to give credit where I can, where I remember. If I don't mention your name and you've done a good question, it's just by, I'm horrible with names. Really good with faces, but terrible with names. Okay, I've also got, I'm working on this documentary of the Catholic Church, so that's going to take up some time. I might not be able to do a video every day or every evening or every couple of days. There may be a little bit of a lull, but don't worry, I ain't going anywhere. That's it for today. Have a good night.